at the bottom of the ocean. Back in 2016, a strange and unexplainable deep-sea anomaly was discovered. Spotted using state-of-the-art satellite information, there appears to be a massive pyramid construction underwater that completely dwarfs the size of the pyramids seen at Giza. It appears that the structure seems to be somewhere around 3.5 to 11 miles across and looks to be resting in a large area of underwater terrain in the Pacific Ocean, a little west of Mexico. Many can even view the massive structure using Google Earth satellite images when looking up the coordinates 12 degrees north at 119 degrees west. The discovery of the object was made by a researcher located out in Argentina by the name of Marcelo Ikazusta. He claims that the structure could be evidence of the formation of an ancient civilization long before man was supposedly capable of roaming the planet, and that, at a different time in Earth's history, could have experienced a change in tide that would allow the construction of the monstrosity. His theories, however, have not prevented a wide range of conspiracy theories from forming in the community. Many believe that it could very well be a possibility that the structure isn't that of a large underwater pyramid, but that of a secret alien base inhabiting the ocean floor. Many have often referenced the existence of strange sightings of unidentified submerged objects, or that of UFOs exiting from under the ocean and shooting off into the sky in different maritime accounts. Given the structure's massive size, sudden appearance, and strange artificial shape, this has led many to undoubtedly believe that it appears to be of extraterrestrial origin. Interestingly enough, other researchers have picked up on the discovery, and well-known alien hunter Scott C. Waring has already posted in his blog UFO Sightings Daily that an 8.5-mile estimate is only a conservative estimate, and that the true size of the discovery could be somewhere north of 11 miles across and possibly grouped up with other impossible-to-see structures in the region. Given the large number of reported USOs throughout the area, known as unidentified submerged objects, that have demonstrated similar properties to that of unidentified flying objects, this has led many researchers to believe that the underwater pyramid is that of an underwater alien research base still being used in the modern day. The Bassano Vars. One of the strangest objects to have ever existed is that of the Bassano Vars. Though incredibly beautiful in its design, this 15th century vase, crafted from carved silver, has been known to carry with it a dark and terrible power. Despite the number of Italian rumours that surround the creation of the vase, the only story that seems to hold any credence is that told by Italian folklore that dates back as far as the original founders of the vase. According to the folklore, a soon-to-be-married bride born in a small village located north of Napoli had been gifted the vase by an unknown individual. That night, after accepting the vase, the woman was found writhing on the floor, clutching the vase closely, only to have suddenly died shortly after. In her death throes, she cursed the vase and claimed that it would only bring misfortune and tragedy to anyone of whom owned the vase for their own personal collection. It's due to this curse that many people believe that the Bassano vase holds a mystical power that has caused many of its future owners. Oddly enough, every owner that has been in possession of the vase has suffered immensely. In some cases, most have died shortly after adding the vase to their personal collection. After the death of the nameless woman, the myths claim that as the vase moved between family members, each person having once owned the vase would mysteriously die shortly after. Despite the value of the Bassano vase, this would eventually cause the surviving members of the family to bury away the vase and hide it at a secret location never to be found. However, the Bassano vase would be rediscovered back in 1988 and continue its streak of mysterious deaths up until the local law enforcement buried the vase at a hidden location, hoping that the vase would be forgotten for good. The Smoky Mountains Disappearance. Father's Day weekend 1969 will never be forgotten by the Martin family, sadly not for happy reasons. On the 14th of June that year, Dennis Martin and his grandfather, father, and younger brother headed to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park for their annual family camp, accompanied by family friends with their 2 young boys. Dennis, a shy boy, mentally about a year behind his peers, was known to respond to any call of his name, even from strangers. That day, the group had hiked to Spence Field near the Appalachian Trail in the park, planning to camp there overnight. The four boys began playing a game of hide-and-seek in the overgrowth, planning to surprise the adults. Minutes later, 3 of the 4 boys jumped out of the trees, but Dennis was nowhere to be seen. After waiting for a few minutes to see if he would appear, Dennis's father William began to worry, and split the group up to search for his son. The time was around 4:30 in the afternoon. Dennis's grandfather Clyde reached the park's ranger station at around 8:30 p.m. Upon his arrival, rain began to lash down, making the search more difficult. Trails were washed away, and with temperatures dropping to around 10 degrees Celsius, the odds of finding Dennis were getting lower and lower. In the days that followed, the search party grew to nearly 1,400 members. So many people looking for Dennis led to clues being obscured and a general lack of organization within the group. The US Army Special Forces, the Green Berets, even joined the search, to no avail. Despite worsening weather conditions over the next few days, footprints were eventually discovered by a nearby stream. Authorities attributed them to Boy Scouts camping in the area, but retired park ranger Dwight McCarter believes that the prints likely belonged to Martin. The search officially ended in September 1969, with Dennis presumed dead, most likely after getting lost and perishing in the awful conditions on the night of his disappearance. However, Dennis's father was convinced that his son had been abducted. After all, the campsite wasn't far from a track that Dennis could easily have been driven away on. This theory was backed up by the Key family, who had been camping in the vicinity at the time of the disappearance. A few days after Dennis went missing, the Key family reported having heard an enormous sickening scream, before seeing a hairy man walking stealthily through the woods near where the scream had come from. There are discrepancies in their account of the Key's story, but some say that the man had something bright red slung over his shoulder. Disturbingly, Dennis was wearing a red t-shirt the day he went missing. Alas, the area was never searched. In 1985, an illegal ginseng hunter came forward saying that he'd discovered remains about 3 miles from Spence Field, which he believed to be those of a young boy. However, fearing prosecution for his illegal hunting, he had kept the discovery to himself for years. This time, the area was searched, but the bones were long gone, likely scattered by animals. Theories abound as to what really happened to Dennis Martin. Did he simply get lost and perish in the harsh conditions, dying from natural causes, starvation, or even animal attack? Or did something much more sinister happen to the little boy? Either way, the unsolved mystery of Dennis Martin means we may never find out how an innocent child cruelly disappeared that weekend in 1969 in Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Alexander Kushin. If you've never heard of Alexander Kushin, he was a very young, ambitious oceanographer and Arctic explorer in the late 1880s to early 90s. At just 17 years of age, Alexander fell in love with the sea and became a seaman on a Norwegian ship. His exposure to Norwegians made him passionate about the culture. He mastered their language in 1 year and would later go on to write short Norwegian to Russian dictionaries for his compatriots. Kushin went for numerous expeditions, especially one to the South Pole. As an oceanographer and navigator, he made numerous observations in the southern Atlantic, but Kushin's biggest exploration was yet to come. In 1911, he earned his biggest trophy when he got engaged to Aslaug Paulsen, the girl of his dreams. They were deeply in love with each other and had planned to get married. At the end of one of their successful summer field expeditions, some top members of Kushin's ship returned to Russia for vacation. Captain Kushin and 10 others of his crew members got bored one day and decided to explore the Pacific Ocean via the northern sea route. The young captain and his crew had failed in consulting with the authorities in St. Petersburg. This would later end up being an awful decision because their ship was too small for the kind of expedition they had embarked on. Unfortunately, that would be the last expedition they would embark on because their ship would later disappear without a trace. The ship was sent in search of the crew in 1914 to 1915, but to no avail. It wasn't until 1937 that relics of the ship would be found. Captain Kushin was a very bright young man but sadly died at the age of 25, leaving behind his 18-year-old fiancée who later died in 1987.
Antoine Rose. Whenever the subject of witchcraft is mentioned, we always picture a witch riding a broom. Have you ever wondered why that is? The story dates back to the 15th century during the time of Antoine Rose, more commonly known as the Witch of Savoy. Rose was put to trial in a court in France in the year 1477. Some believed that she was under torture. According to her story, she was struggling and in a desperate need of money. Having no one to turn to, she decided to tell her neighbour about her ordeal. This neighbour allegedly introduced her to a group of people who convinced her to come to the devil for help. According to Antoine Rose, the devil appeared to her in the form of a man called Robinet. He offered to provide all the money that she wants with the condition that she would abandon God and honour him, the devil, instead. Being destitute and desperate at the same time, Rose had to choose between dying of poverty and making a deal with the devil. She agreed to his terms to pay homage to him through rituals. The devil made another demand that she should pay him a portion of her earnings each year. Sounds like the devil knows how to collect tax. She agrees to this as well. The devil kept his end of the bargain, and he gave Antoine Rose a bag of gold and silver. He also gave her a few other things that she did not exactly ask for. Those items did not have any monetary value, but it was for Rose to use during the rituals she needed to perform to pay homage to the devil. She received a stick and a jar filled with ointment. These came with a set of instructions and directions. To her surprise, all she needed to do was dip the stick to the ointment, mount it, and utter the words, "Go, in the devil's name, go." According to Rose, the rituals she performed for the devil required her to dance, feast, and kiss the behind of the devil when she transformed into a black dog. She admitted that she was terrified when she met the devil the first time. She recounted that he had a hoarse voice that she hardly understood what he was saying. Antoine Rose's story is not the original when it comes to the devil giving women powers to fly on a broomstick. Guillaume Edelin was earlier by a few years who shared her story in 1453. Guillaume admitted to being forced and tortured to fly on a broomstick. Every culture has its own version of the origin of witches. As for France and the whole world, Rose and Edelin's stories are how the broomstick started coming into the picture. The question that comes to mind after hearing these accounts is not so much whether or not they were real, but how much gold and silver did they get, and was it worth it? MV Joyita. The almost unsinkable MV Joyita was found in poor condition and drifting near Fiji 5 weeks after it disappeared. It was partially submerged, but it wasn't sunk. However, by the time it was discovered, its 25 crew and passengers were all long gone, with the cargo and 3 life rafts. If you were one of the passengers, knowing that the ship you are on has a very strong structure, would you have risked sailing on a life raft in an open sea at night instead of staying aboard? The logical answer would be a resounding no. But what exactly happened that night? Nobody knows. It all started on October 3rd, 1955. MV Joyita left Apia Harbour in Samoa bound for the Tokelau Islands, which is about 270 miles away. It was originally scheduled to leave the day before, but it had an issue with its port engine clutch. It eventually sailed the next day running on only one engine. It had 16 crew members and 9 passengers, including 1 doctor. MV Joyita was expected to reach Tokelau in no more than 48 hours. It was supposed to arrive on October 5th, 1955. It was already a day overdue when the port of Whakaufo reported that MV Joyita never made it. No distress signal was received from the crew, which left everyone with no clues as to what happened. A search and rescue team was sent the same day, and for a whole week they tried to find answers, but they came back with nothing. It wasn't until November 10th, 1955, when the captain of another merchant ship sighted MV Joyita drifting 600 miles off its course. It was found slightly submerged and empty. All its passengers and more than 4 tons of cargo were all gone. Based on the remaining fuel, the ship made it about 243 miles on its course before the engine failed due to a pipe leak in the engine cooling system. The radio system was found to have been functioning, but only had a reach of 2 miles. Even if the ship had sent a distress signal, it would never have been received. However, this could have been easily fixed by one of the members of the crew. These findings create a deeper mystery surrounding the real events that happened that night. For decades, numerous theories have been suggested, but today we are going to focus on the two most controversial ones. The first theory accuses the Japanese forces of having kidnapped and killed the passengers of MV Joyita. The year 1955 was still around the time when Japanese forces were to blame concerning any sea vessel disappearances in this area. The MV Joyita might have witnessed something that they shouldn't have, which made them a target of a Japanese group. This would also explain the missing cargo, as it could have been transferred to another ship. The second theory has something to do with Captain Thomas H. Miller, the captain of MV Joyita. He knew that the ship was sturdy and could at least keep them all safe until the daytime. However, the evidence found on the recovered ghost ship proves that the passengers left at night. According to a close friend of the captain, knowing him, he would have never left the ship even if it cost him his life, and yet the captain was gone along with the rest of the people aboard. One of the most logical explanations for this could be that the captain was injured or somehow incapacitated. This theory has gained credence following the discovery of blood-stained bandages on the ship.
Hoya Bashu Forest UFOs. Hoya Bashu Forest has been a hotbed of mysterious reports from the locals living in Transylvania. The legends of the area go back to times from its original finding, including claims of vampiric entities roaming through its trees. Further investigations from nearby residents have also located a large circular clearing at the center of the forest that seems to not be visible from above. This clearing is reported as being a portal into another dimension, and that those who enter it may not ever return after doing so. Tourists often report sudden feelings of intense anxiety and nausea as they begin approaching towards the center of the forest. There also seems to be a record number of panic attacks that seem to be reported in the region as well. Though there are no claims of seeing anything supernatural, paranormal, or extraterrestrial, reports of overbearing paranoia pour in as more and more tourists visit this location in awe. Interestingly enough, conspiracy theorists have made a strange connection between the nature of the forest and numerous different extraterrestrial encounters in the past. Apparently, there seems to be a connection between the sudden feelings of paranoia and anxiety in the forest and that of sudden encounters with extraterrestrials. Many often report that when an alien ship is nearby, whether they are aware of it or not, they will suddenly feel a terrible anxiety and panic come over them, similar to that experienced in the forest of Hoya Bashu. This has led some conspiracy theorists to believe that perhaps the area is inhabited or visited by that of extraterrestrial beings. Regardless of this belief, scientists are still unable to explain the constant feelings of dread and anxiety experienced by those of whom visit the forest and believe it to be potentially a strange and unique case of mass hysteria caused by the reactions of others that build up in large groups.
Women from Lem Statue. Also known as the Goddess of Death, Women from Lem is a historic artifact carved from pure limestone. It was discovered in 1878 during an excavation in Lem, Cyprus. Archaeologists believe that it was made around 3500 BCE. The exact purpose of this mysterious statue is unknown. Since its discovery, this statue has been in possession of 4 different families, and each family has had a tragic ending. Lord Elfont was the first owner of the Women from Lem statue. He, along with his 6 other family members, died within 6 years of acquiring the statue. The second owner was Ivor Minucci. He had a similar fate, and he, along with his family, died within 4 years of acquiring the mysterious artifact. The same thing happened to the third owner, Thompson Knoll, and his family. Then the statue disappeared for a while, and no one knows who had it in their possession. However, it reappeared and came into the possession of Sir Alan Biverbrook, who did not know about the fate of the previous owners. Sir Alan Biverbrook, his wife, and 2 daughters died a few months after getting the statue. Realising that there was some kind of curse attached to the statue, the 2 surviving sons of Sir Alan Biverbrook donated the artefact to the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh, Scotland. The curse of the statue even affected the museum curator, who died within 1 year.
Since then, the statue has been kept at the museum, and those who know about it stay away from it while visiting the museum. Mysterious orb lights. Over the years, many people have reported seeing mysterious lights in Marfa, Texas. For this reason, the lights have been called the Marfa lights. What's different about these lights, though, is the fact that they've been seen for many generations. Early settlers would describe seeing bright objects that pulsated, and when they tried to approach them, they simply vanished. The lights appear almost nightly and can be seen at a distance from Highway 90. One recent theory that's been put forward is that these lights are actually car headlights, and what people are seeing is the reflections. They are most commonly observed close to Route 67 on Mitchell Flat east of Marfa, Texas. But the thing is, there is nothing around this location. It's mostly shrubs and desert, and as mentioned, these lights have been seen for hundreds of years, so that rules out the idea of it being cars. Some have suggested the lights could be a form of UFO. Over the years, quick-moving orbs have been linked to UFOs. Skinwalker Ranch is one property where these orbs have been seen. The family living here started noticing glowing blue balls moving around the property. The balls gave off a crackling sound, seemed intelligently controlled, and could either hover or move unbelievably fast. One evening, the family watched as a blue ball approached one of their horses. The light hovered within a foot of the horse's face, which spooked it immediately. From a distance of 10 feet, they shined a flashlight on the blue globe and it retreated. It then approached one of the family members as if inspecting them. They described it as a glass ball about the size of a baseball, which appeared to contain two blue fluids which intermingled with each other. Some have suggested the Marfa lights are ball lightning. Ball lightning is the strange occurrence of when the conditions appear to be just right and the static discharge of a normal thunderstorm creates what appears to be floating balls of pure lightning and energy. Not only do these strange, unexplained instances of ball lightning create an unexplainable perfect spherical shape, but they also appear to move erratically through the sky and have often been mistaken as alien encounters. Interestingly enough, scientists are no closer to understanding what causes ball lightning and believe that the circumstances surrounding the appearance might be completely unexplainable given the numerous amounts of variables surrounding their creation.
The disappearance of Laura Bradbury. The final case we're going to talk about today is the heartbreaking disappearance of Laura Bradbury. 3-year-old Laura Bradbury, along with her 2 parents and older brother, were camping in the Joshua Tree National Park in 1984. It was on October 18th that Laura, along with her then 8-year-old brother Travis, went to the portable restrooms at the campground they were staying at. Travis left Laura outside whilst he used the restroom. By the time he had come out, Laura was gone. A search party of 250 people, with the assistance of helicopters and dogs, scoured the national park for Laura. After no breakthrough within 3 days, the police ended their search. Despite this, the Bradbury family showed no sign of stopping, handing out millions of flyers and even appearing on national TV to get the word out. They also set up a dedicated hotline for any information. A bearded man thought to be in his 50s, described as pot-bellied, with a blue van, was seen around the area right before Laura disappeared, and then later near Burns Canyon. Michael, Laura's father, began to lose faith in the police and slammed them for not following up enough on tips coming through, telling reporters that the police were incompetent or lazy or both, and even went as far to suggest a cover-up. Michael then found out about Toby Santangelo and Clifford LaVille, and the fact that they supposedly told police information regarding the suspected kidnapper, but it was apparently investigated and deemed not credible. These 2 men were then found killed shortly after coming forward. 2 years later, in 1986, a child's skull was found a couple of miles away from the campsite. However, it was never able to be proven it was Laura's. However, new tests were carried out on the skull in 1990, and they found the skull was a 99% match to Laura. Since 2009, Michael has been requesting the transfer of the skull found to a mortuary. But because there has yet to be a death certificate issued, the remains cannot be released. During an interview in 2010, Michael said that he was shown 2 completely different skulls during the investigation. A smaller partial skull shortly after the remains were found, and a larger, full skull later on in the investigation. Also, in a report on tests carried out, whilst the skull was a match in one DNA test, there were 3 other tests carried out, including one using hair from Laura's hairbrush, did not match the skull. What happened to Laura Bradbury remains a mystery to this day.